Alrighty, so let's talk about the Revolve project and how to go about doing that. Now, as I said, a couple of examples. Main thing is it must be of two components, 1 and 2 components. We're going to talk about the distinction between that versus bodies and such we've done so far. Must have some sort of drainage hole, which this one technically has. So we hole in the bottom, but that'll be making a adorable little planter for some sort of vessel or some sort of plant. And you're using the Revolve to create the thing. Pretty much it. So first thing is there's a new folder here. Make sure you load your or save your finished projects to the new folder with your name in it. All right. So first thing I want to go ahead and discuss is the difference between components. That's one of the first requirements. Now, so far, your badge projects really have been made up of a single component. Remember, the hierarchy goes this very top one is denoted by a cube where it says untitled and soon to be something else on your hierarchy tree. Below that, you'll have sketches and bodies and all that kind of things. Components consist of sketches, bodies, and that. They can have as many sketches, bodies, and a variety of other things. We are going to make multiple components. So what will happen is you will still have your main project, but within that, you will have other components. One will be the vessel, and one will be the dish or whatever. Dish, bowl, you title it however you please. Within each of these components will be their own sketches, will be their own bodies, yada, yada, yada. To create that, what we've done so far is just work straight from there. To make that part, look at your toolbox up top, and about midway under the assemble tree or the assemble drop down, the first thing is new component. I click that, get these out of the way, and you can put a label in right here. So I'll go with vessel. And as soon as I did that, look at the hierarchy tree. Now there's another cube there. It says vessel, like I said, but the very top now is the symbol has changed to, instead of a single cube, it's a stack of cubes, simply denoting that there are multiple components there. Can I have multiple components within each component? Yes. You can make it extremely confusing for yourself. But as we go through the semester, that's also how we're going to create multiple part assemblies that can move and things like that. But for now, working on this way. Now, I like to go ahead and just lay out, if I know what I'm going to be making, how many parts I need, I like to just throw those out right from the get-go, just so they are established. Now, if I were to go and hit new component right now, the problem is what I have active is my component already. To activate a component, if you mouse over it, you'll see this little dot show up on the right side. If I mouse over the very top, same thing will happen. It is unchecked. If I leave this one checked and hit new component, I'll just say leave it as component 2. Now that vessel component also has a multi-stack, and that component is within that. Don't do that. That's not what you want to do right now. Right now. Later on the semester, absolutely. But for now, I'm going to leave it there. That means I'm going to go back up to the very top, reactivate the whole project. Now hit new component, and I'm going to label that as dish. Okay. So what is the first thing you're supposed to do and I didn't do? Save your project. So I just wanted to jump in and show you that. Also, I forgot. All right. Example. Revolve vessel. Within all of that, super good. Save there. There we are. All right. So now I can expand and close any of these. I have multiple components to start with. So what I'd want to do is I can work from the main thing, but I prefer for this, put all your appropriate parts within where they need to be. So I'm going to use vessel, and I'm going to start a new sketch. What do you know? All right, so the assignment is to make a vessel of general size, maxing out at about like 120 millimeters by like 100. If you want to go right for there, go for it. So one of the things I like to do when I start working dimensionally, or I need to actually make sure to build something within a boundary, is I do just that. So I'm going to go to front. I'm going to start a sketch because, especially with this, unlike the first project, we were working on the XY plane because we're drawing like you're on a table and extruding up. This, you're going to be working right in front of you, and we're going to be revolving that. You're also going to be taking note of the different axes and how they actually meet at the origin point, meaning just like here, red line is your x-axis, left and right, blue is z, up and down. Think of those as actual proper quadrants. If you want to go back to ye old math stuffs, yeah, we're not going to get into calculus, but think of them as quadrants because they are. So I'm going to start a sketch. I'm going to work on the XZ plane right in front of me. All right. So I need to make sure this is I want to make sure that this is within the 120 by 100 millimeters. Okay. So I'm going to start with create rectangle, and I'm going to go to a center point rectangle. You remember you can add these and subtract these from your workspace by mousing over the tool, the vertical ellipse, the 3 dots, click there. My screen is just smaller. So if you check these, it'll pin to toolbar, also to your shortcuts. So I want a center point. So right in the center. Now I can do this by hand, but that's not going to be quite right. So I can go back. I can adjust that from here. Meaning to do that, well, how do I get back into that? Double click. Nope, that gets everything. Go up to the top to this tool, sketch dimension, or just press D. If I select that, draw up a little bit, that brings back up my numeric input option. So I'm going to type in 120. Do the same. Repeat dimension right there. Let's drop that down to 100. Now, what if I wanted to do the opposite? Make it 120 by 100. That's fine. Double click, 120, enter. There you go. Pretty easy to do. Now, the other thing is, okay, this is an actual full sketch. I want this as a reference image, or rather reference lines. So what I'm going to do is double click here and either go over to your toolbox or press X on here, line type, construction line. I click that and it translates that to a dotted line. Hit escape. Now these are not full sketches. See, inside the sketch, it is no longer highlighted in light blue. So these are just reference lines. So I can use this to mouse over and connect things and use my snap tools for them to lock into place. But I just like working this way because it allows me to have a visual aid of what I need to do, but then I can mess with it and not interfere with that. So if you really want to, I can finish this sketch, hit done, open sketches, rename this, and just, I don't know, boundaries, whatever, just for reference. So if you're so as you get more complex and things, if you want to build yourself things like this, I work this way. That's just my personal preference. I'm going to start another sketch. There we go. All right. So now I want to create my profile. Now, a couple things. Do keep in mind what you want to do, but also, just like the first project, you can do pretty much whatever you please. There are no real constraints to how you go about this yet. We will talk about, or we're going to talk about what does need to be considered, though. Now, I talked about you want to think about the actual grid workspace as quadrants. Yes, but you don't have to be quite so rigid. Main thing I want to concern myself with, and I don't know why it turned to green because that's not supposed to be the y-axis, that's supposed to be the z-axis. Anyway, I'm going to work only on one side of that. I don't need, like the little teacup, I don't need an entire half. What I actually need is a quarter, because I'm going to use that partial profile and revolve it around. You could do the whole half if you wanted, but then you'd only revolve at 180 degrees instead of a full 360. I'll explain. Now, the reason I said you should think of it in quadrants, it does help, honestly, if I had drawn this sketch, this boundary box all above the x-axis, but you don't actually have to. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a fit point spline and just start somewhere. But I'm going to work all to the right of my what's supposed to be z-axis, but in this case, for some reason, it's showing up green. So start somewhere at the bottom. Start drawing some points. Remember, I can draw out. If it does get larger, it's not the end of the world or anything. We're just kind of doodling here. Maybe it'll make this kind of like a vessel. Okay. Fit point spline. Now I have some points. I can manipulate these points. I can select that and drag out the handlebars, really mess this thing up. I wouldn't go too crazy, but somewhere-ish. That works, something to that effect. Okay. Hit enter, escape it, finish the tool, great. Now, one of the things you want to do here, or rather you can do here, is like with the first project, I showed you how to use the offset tool. You could make two different profiles entirely, but if you're just making a consistently thick wall, why draw a second line? The offset tool here, or press O, allows you, sketch palettes, allows you to just draw a second line based off of the first. So select there. And as I said, somewhere between 3 and 5 millimeter thick walls. Honestly, it's probably overkill. I would say 3 at max. But there you go. Now, one thing I want you to note, no matter which direction I'm going, remember this is an offset. This is not an exact duplicate. Things like saying if I wanted to use the scale and move tool, or actually just move tool, you would then be making an exact duplicate or a scale and duplicate. With this, as I expand and contract, look how the offset distorts my original image, or rather how it compensates for it. So it will maintain as best it can a continuous wall thickness. And again, that's a 20 millimeter wall, that you don't need that. But how it closely resembles the original line, but it's not exact. The other reason you would want to use the offset tool, if you decide, even if let's just say we'll leave it at 20. Okay, sure. If I decided, you know what, I really want this actually to be a little bit further out, the whole offset will recalculate based off of what you just drew. So if you drew a second line by hand, you would have to redraw that one as well. Or the opposite, if you wanted to maintain an inner wall the exact same way and wanted to manipulate the outer one, then yeah, don't use an offset. Draw 2 separate lines. In this case, I'm going to use the offset because I want to do that. So I'm going to double click there again, bring that back to 3 millimeters. Whoop. Good. All right. A couple of things on this now. I can draw a straight line between these. There we go. And then down here, well, one issue, well, let's just discuss it as we go. Draw a straight line between those. All right. That is now a closed sketch, light blue, and when I hover over it, it highlights. Another thing, just so you know, the reason these lines have now turned purple from a construction line, Fusion will automatically, and you could use the command as well, project lines from one sketch to another. If you are drawing on one sketch that overlaps another, but because it's visible, you interact with that first sketch. So like here, I happen to put one of my vertices right on that point. It will automatically copy that line over as a reference line. So if I hide the first, just so it could still show you that line there, so you could make use of it since you already did. If I were to have changed this, see, it's locked onto that line now. That's okay. If I want to change that, what I could do, it'll still let me manipulate up and down the length of that, but it assumes I wanted to lock to that line. That's why I put that point there. If I need to change that, go to the point, right click on it, and down here, you'll see these fix, unfix, and delete coincidence. A coincidence means that it is interacting with two different things. They interact, they coincident together. So select that. Now I should be able to drag that. Oops. Not what I meant to do. It gets a little screwy. Use the move tool. Grab that. It's not letting me. Hang on. Nope, 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 nope. There we go. Move that point. There we are. But problem is because that was all interlinked. Let me try a different option. Let me go to that point and I'll unfix it, see if that does it. That still warps it around, but let's move it. Nope. Yeah, when you lock to something, it really gets screwy here. Let's see here if I can get rid of this. I want to delete the coincident there, but I think it got a couple of them. So there we go. That should do it. So I'm just right clicking on that vertex, clicking delete coincidence. Now I should be able to move it. It said should. Yeah, Fusion sometimes gets a little bit too literal. Don't need you to do that. Well, you know what? We're going to leave it there for now then. We'll deal with it later. Fine. I don't know why why even deleting coincidence is not unlocking it. Deal with it later. All right. For now, just for the point of moving on with the discussion, finish sketch. Okay, cool. I've got this closed sketch. We're good. For some reason, did I do something to it? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay. Do be aware that when it translates or when it picks up projection lines, those will start to interact. Gets kind of obnoxious. If you want, you can delete those. Just get rid of it. There you go. All right. So now that's, in essence, it. What we're going to do now is go to the Revolve tool. And like normal, you mouse over something, gives you a nice description and visual aid. Takes a sketch and revolves it around a chosen point. It could be an axis, a line you draw in, but that's what we're going to use. All right, select that. Mouse over this profile. Make sure I got the whole thing because that line did interact with that. Okay. I'm just going to go back, use my home button to go to perspective. Now my axis selection, go to there. I'm going to use the Z axis. What's going on here? Yep, that's okay. It's going to give me an error because one of the things that happens here is it is over the line, but I'll show you what that means in a minute. I want to use full axis. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was going to do it anyway, or if it was going to be a problem. Okay, so I'm getting this error here. Come on, come back up. Ugh. There we go. It's not creating the revolve because this line down here crosses my intended axis. So, okay, that's fine. I was going to address this anyway. So when I go back to front, my front view here, like I said, I'm using the major Z axis here. Well, one of the issues is my sketch crosses that line. You need that to not happen. So I'll go back, edit my sketch. Not a big deal. So how I can change that? Well, one, let me unhide my first. That didn't help. I couldn't remember if there was a vertical line there or not. All right. So I'm going to start a new line, but I want this to be a construction line. I don't want it to have much of any effect. I'm just going to go draw from the top. And remember, when you mouse over something, the little triangle that shows up, that is the middle. Straight down. Whoop. All I want, just that line. Now when I zoom in, use my trim tool. I can chop those parts out. Now that does show up, but because it's a construction line, it doesn't complete the sketch. So if I do in fact want that to be my other line, I could draw that in manually, or I can just use the line that's already there. So I can change that back from a construction line to a regular line. Now my profile is closed. Okay. Zoom back out, go back to perspective. Now when I go to Revolve, I can select my profile, get that little bit there too. Axis, either that whole line, but it also shares the Z-axis, so it's fine either way. Bam. Instant round object. This is why it's a shorter project. Okay, cool. That's really what I wanted out of this. Great. Now, one of the things on here, we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, but the appearance, default appearance is this steel. If you use Shift in, Shift November, it goes to auto assign. This is just automatically assigning colors to your components. It has no bearing on the actual appearance. All right, that's my object. Now I do want to make some alterations to this. Like I said, one of the requirements for the assignment has to have drain holes. Another thing, of course, would be, well, if this thing's set, if I print it this way, well, it's got this weird little divot. Also, that weird little divot would not exactly make this a stable pot. So I do want to adjust that. I can adjust that in my sketches. I'll adjust that in a second, because first what I want to do is now draw my second object. This is not necessarily the progression of steps you need to take. I just want to show you all the difference on jumping between objects. Okay, or rather components, sorry. So now that's the vessel, good there. Make sure to save. Revolve Tool. Okay. So I want to activate now my other component. Go to the component, activate the little checkbox or click the dot, whatever. Now my first component ghosts out. I can still see it. If I bring up the sketches, I can still see the sketch. I can still technically interact with it if I want them to be visible enough, or I can just draw this totally separately. But I do like having that there just as a reference, so I can just kind of see what I did before. From here, same thing. All right, let me make a dish. Start a new sketch, same plane. I'm working on this other component, and now I'm going to use a fit point spline, and I'm just going to draw something below. I am starting on that line. We all saw what happened before, and I can just start drawing up. We'll make sure this has a good lip on it. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Let's say this got a little bit out of whack. Okay. Now, I want this dish to be flat. So what I'll do is I can move these vertices around. But let's say I get, just about there. It's not quite. Well, how do I fix this? What I can do is I can zoom in, grab the handlebars, and start to adjust from there. So this is where I could actually work to flatten that sketch. It's not going to be perfect. Realistically, the best way to flatten a sketch is to make sure that your vertices are on the same grid line. So, actually do that, and that'll actually flatten it. There you go. But if it's still not quite, because if I zoom in here, you can see that it is not. I can use one of the handlebars, drag that up a little bit. Yes, that's what I want. And try to get that about level. Ultimately, if you want to make sure this is absolutely flat, don't use a fit point spline, use an actual line. So if I do that instead, line from there, straight over. Boop. Now I go in and trim that first one. Oh, I cut the whole thing off. That's okay too. That is a flat line. Now I can instead start from that flat line with a fit point spline and draw upwards, and I have my handy dish. Okay. Now, of course, the one issue of going from a straight line to a fit point spline, transition is never that great. You can use the handlebars to try to tweak this, and you can get close. You can get it pretty good. That actually looks pretty decent. But if it is still a little bit wonkier than you would like, one of the other things you could use is the fillet tool. We talked about this last class about how to make a corner curved based off of a radius. It doesn't have to be a 90-degree angle or even close. I can use a fillet tool here. So select there. Between these very close lines, and even though it's small, it will adjust and make that line a lot smoother. Of course, then there's that vertex up there. So, yeah, you got stuff to work with. Let's see what I can do here. Yeah, that's gonna mess with all kinds. Just playing with the inputs. All right, that'll work. Tangent, line, goody gumdrops. Okay, that'll work. So now I'm going to use my offset tool again. Select there. I'm going to go down instead. Let's say -3, so it's still 3 millimeter. Great. Now for this one, I want to show you all a couple of different things. One, let's say I don't want that to be a flat lip. I want that to be rounded. So I'm going to go up to Create. And if I want it to be more elliptical, I could do that. I want to use a circle, but I'm going to use a 2-point circle. What that means is instead of drawing from the center and going outwards, it starts at one point and creates a circle by the diameter based off the other point. And then you get to select where that other point goes. So I can simply select one and then the other. Now I have a rounded edge. Escape to get out of there. Trim, chop that off. Now I have a nicely rounded edge. Yeah, you'll get a constraint warning. That's okay. Same, I do want to make sure that my line here is fully connected. Boop, boop. There we go. Finish sketch. All right. Go out. Revolve tool. Right there. Axis. Z-axis. Boop. New body. That's fine. Now that body is all of that. The dish is all within the dish component. The jar, or rather the vessel, is not. To activate the entire thing, go all the way to the top. Select there. Now I have both of them. And now dish. All right. That's the very, very most basic parts of this project. I need to make some major adjustments. One of which is there's no drainage hole in this. So I've just made a bucket, which is convenient if I need that, but not for the project. The other thing is, let me hide the body on there so I can see the sketch. Well, that ain't gonna sit on that dish, is it? I need to either adjust the bottom of this vessel, make some sort of foot on it, or seriously adjust the dish. I could do a combination of those. So what I can do is I'm going to go back. I want to adjust the actual sketch on my vessel. Right click there, goes back. My dish disappears because it's also going back in time. I know it's fun. It's fun for me. Whatever. All right. So again, this is definitely why you want to use the offset tool. All right. So I do want this to be flat. So let me select there. Let's start tweaking these handlebars. Now it did mess up my oh yeah, that's right, I forgot, because my I had that coincident there that scrambled a bunch of stuff. So we're gonna have to mess with this a little bit. All right. So I'm gonna make this a little bit flatter. Doesn't actually have to be completely flat. That's all right. Tell you what, actually, let's leave it there. Okay. I'll just work with that so you can see how I can fix this. All right, so I have that weird little divot. Realistically, I should redraw that bottom half entirely so that it's flat. Or maybe I want to make it more like an amphora or something like that. You could totally do that. And then just adjust the dish so it actually has more of a receiver. Same diff. I want to add a foot to this. So what I'm going to do, simply draw another line. I'm going to make sure it connects somewhere. So before I mouse over the existing sketch, my crosshair or my cursor is a plus sign in the square. Mouse over, changes to an X. Good. I want that to be somewhere on this line. We'll go to right there. Why not? And I'm just going to draw outward a little bit. I'm going to make this kind of a nice little curving foot. Okay. Offset, same. Let's keep it in same 3 millimeters. Now that doesn't connect. I'll show you how to fix that. I want to do the same rounded bottom here. Let's see here. I know my stuff. 2 point there to there. Super good. I'll trim that in a second or do it now. That also works. Boop. Chop that off. Now, how do I fix this? Can I just draw a line? Yes, of course. But there is a tool for that. Under Modify, there's the Extend line. Because what this does is it maintains the geometry, or at least the assumed projected geometry. So select that. And now you see as I mouse over this line, this red line that it's going to add in, it maintains that curve. It's not just a straight across. Using the Extend tool helps out and maintains that curve. So I can keep it going if I want to, but I don't. So there we go. It escaped, finish out the tool. Sweet. Now, realistically, I could trim out the barrier between these, or you could leave it. It honestly doesn't matter. It does streamline things if you trim it, but I can just leave it there. It's all right. Finish sketch. Now, I haven't altered anything yet. What I need to do not, well, you could add another revolve, but there's no point in it. Go back, edit feature, and instead, now also add that part. Now it's joined. It's all part of that same sketch. Boop. Now I have a fancy schmancy, rather involved foot at the bottom there. Gonna have to move some stuff. I kind of made that a little bit too large. That's all right. Yeah, I can, of course, make that much smaller, or yeah, I probably should and will. Or I can move all of this stuff around. We'll deal with it that way. So if that's the case, cool. I see where that is. I see you. So let's go back, choppity chop the sketch. I only need that to be like half that size. That's cool. So then tell you what, let's do create circle. I'll just move this around. I'll pick somewhere. Sure, you do right there. And to maintain that that is in fact the same diameter of 3, I'll put 3 in. And now I'm going to zoom in and just rotate that circle down to where it actually intersects with my other line. Cool. Now let's do some trim and chop. I want to get rid of you, get rid of all of you, and you. And there we go. Away you go. Finished. Now complete with far more reasonable sized little foot. Cool. Alrighty. Save. Foot added. All right. So next up, I need some drain holes. Now, a couple things. How many and what size, any of that, totally up to you. So let's say, just for basics, I want to draw just an array of circles. I could do the center circle or multiples. I'll show you both. How to do that? Well, I'm going to use the sketch and extrude. So basically, just like you did for the badges, only when I extrude that sketch upwards, instead of making a body, I'm going to use the cut feature off of that and chop those holes out of the vessel here. So to do that, I'm going to move to the top, make a new sketch. Make sure you're still on the vessel component. I want to select just the vessel. It hides everything. There we go. The reason for that is that way it's not accidentally dropping stuff into anything else. Meaning any sketches I create or anything is within the vessel itself. So sort of new sketch. There we go. And let's zoom in. Let's work on this. All right. So first I'm going to make just a center circle. Sure. Let's say that first one is 10 millimeters big. That's reasonable enough. Rocks ain't gonna fall out of there. That works. Now you can, of course, if you want, as a reference, maybe you create another one, and I'm going to, oops, say, all right, I'm just trying to plan out where do I really want these. Sure, let's say 50 millimeters out. You don't have to do this. Select that, and I'm just going to turn that into a construction line, that circle. Select the circle, press X. It's a construction line. It's just a reference for me. Now, I'm going to start another one. I'm going to make these some other holes just as an array. Well, let's make those also 10. That's fine. I accidentally forget to select or deselect construction, so it defaulted to making that a construction line. Reselect that circle, press X or line type on there. Just goes back to regular. Okay, I don't have to draw every one. I'm gonna finish sketch. I'm gonna show you a couple of different ways you could do this. I'm gonna show you one and then the better way. Now, what I could do is to make multiples of that sketch, of that circle, go down to create. Oops, I accidentally finished the sketch. I meant to, see here, drain holes. Let's label those. What I meant to do is finish this inside the sketch. All right, so I reactivated the sketch. I'm editing the sketch. Sketchy sketch. Go to create, and down here I have circular pattern. And select there my objects, just that circle. My center point is that center point. It automatically will draw them, and by default, by equal distance. I can play with how many I want to add. You could make a whole array and basically chop the whole bottom out. You could draw that back to 1 or 2 or 5 or 20 or whatever you please. Whatever seems reasonable. I'm going to stay with 5 because uneven numbers are more fun for no good reason. You can also make this non-symmetrical. This angular spacing, select there. Instead of full, select angle. And now you can decide if you want these all on only like 180 degrees. You can use the slider here to select up to 360. So you have a lot of free range with that. But I'm going to do all the way around symmetrical. 5 for reasons. Okay. Now, finish the sketch. Oh, that drew it. That's right. I drew it all the way there. That's okay. All right. Now, got that. Go to extrude or press E. I can select all of my little holes here, even the middle one. And if I use the slider, I can draw that straight down. And when it gets down, it automatically switches to cut. And it's going to cut holes. Now, one thing, if you ever decide you want to change this, like meaning you go back, you know what, I actually wanted this thing to be taller. So because what I mean by this is if I just put in a number, okay, it's through the vessel, that's plenty. Let's say -61, sure. Those holes now extend, those imaginary extrusions always go only to 61 millimeters from the sketch, from the original sketch. If I went back to my profile, and I need to rename this. If I went back to this and redrew this sketch much taller, those extrusions, I would then have to go back and readdress that extrusion. However, let me go back to what I just did there. If I select, start's good, direction one side, extent type, instead of by distance, let me open this up and go to object, and then I select the bottom of the vessel. They will always recalculate to the bottom of that vessel. So this is an excellent way that Fusion can automatically recalculate things for you, and it's already built in. You don't have to go back and manually change each step all the way down through your time slider should you decide you want to make changes. I really like working this way if I can. So do that. There we go. All right. Now another issue with this is, okay, cool. Looks good, but you know what? Problematic. Let's make those a little bit more rounded because just sharp holes, not as good. Use the fillet tool. Now I could select each one of these and do a regular fillet, or if I wanted this to be actually rounded over, I'll show you the difference. Let's select bottom of each of these. And we'll just say 1. Let me change my view style here because you can't see what's going on here. There we go. I just activated just the hidden edges or visible edges so you can see what's happening. Now you can see that that's rounded on the bottom and you can't see anything on top because it's there. Very good. Or what I could do is instead, let me go to full round. And if I select the inside here, see if it does it. There we go. Now it completely rounded over that entire hole. So I can keep adding these. I don't know why it's making me select these one at a time. Oh, because it's just slightly different. Sometimes it won't do it. Fine, jerk. I don't know why it would allow me to do that one, but not the others. Okay. That one would allow me to do full round, only now it canceled it, so no idea. Compute failed. All right, fine. Sometimes it won't work because of the geometry. It's all because it's curved and such. If it were a flatter line, the bottom of that vessel, it'd work probably fine. Anyhow, let's repeat fillet, and then let's just go ahead and select the whole interface, or the interface of the hole. Hey, there we go. And I can use the slider or do it numerically. You can see I can only go so far before it craps up. Like I said, in a lot of this kind of stuff, oh my God, what's going on here? I think I overpowered the computer. When you're doing fillets and such, unless you have a fairly powerful computer, I recommend making the adjustments numerically. So changing, instead of using the slider, enter like 1 or delete 2 and yada yada. Let's see here. I think I just froze it all out. Uh-oh. Well, crap spackle. Let me give it a moment. I'm going to pause the recording here. All right. We're back and the computer didn't explode. All right. So like I said, honestly, I prefer to do this numerically, especially if you don't have an overly powerful computer like this desktop here. If I just enter like numerically, all right, 1 works. That actually works well. 1 millimeter fillet. Cool. Okay. So technically that all worked just fine. However, there's another way around that to where you can make 1 modification and then use the circular pattern tool to make multiples of the completed feature. Now I'll show you how to do that on this next part. So let me save here. Drainage holes. And I'm going to instead chop holes in the side of this pot. I grow a few orchids. I'm going to make this a little more aerated. I want to make this an orchid pot. And one of the things that makes it that is it just has a bunch of holes in the sides to allow for more airflow. So how I can do that, instead of cutting holes in the bottom, I'm going to cut them in the front. And then I'm going to use the circle pattern to make multiples of that going around. So instead of going top or bottom, I'm going to work from the front, create a new sketch. This is assuming it's on the inside. There we are. Now I keep selecting that profile because that sketch is there. Let's hide that because that's getting in my way. Sometimes it gets kind of awkward to actually catch the origin plane. If that does become difficult, just temporarily hide the body. There you go. Now you can unhide it and you've got the thing selected. All right. Depends on who's asking. All right, so what I want to do is I'm just going to draw a doodle on here. Same thing. Let's see. I can say with oh, I know. I'm going to create a fit point spline. And one of the other options is there's also circle pattern. Let's see if it'll let me do this. No, it's not going to let me do it on here. Okay, never mind. All right. So I can use that first fit point spline, my offset tool, and let's make this a little bit larger. Something. Other way. Let's say -8. I'm just pulling numbers out of my brain. That works. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same that I did before. Use a 2-point circle to just make rounded ends for this. There we are. Trim. Choppity chop. All right. Now I have this kind of snaky curve thing going. Finish sketch. Now you can see it's flat. It's much larger than the other things are. That's okay. I'm going to do the same, extrude, select that sketch. Let me see if it'll let me do a 2 object, because sometimes it won't let you use a 2 object on rounded surfaces. Oh, it did. Great. So that cut right through 2 object. So I'm still using this selection type. So if I go back and change, it will recalculate always back to the surface. Great. It's uncut. That's what I want. Awesome. Now I got this hole in the side. Let's try to round this over. So I'm going to use a fillet tool. I'm going to see if the full round works. It's a complex shape, so it probably won't. Or I'll fry out the computer again. Hey, it did. Neat. Okay, so it rounded that all the way around. If you look in more closely, you can see it is fully rounded there. Neat. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm not in the sketch environment. I've completed that. We're all done with that. Now I'm going to use the same tool, create. Where was it? Oh, no, it's under modify in this one. Where is it? Where are you? Brain fart in here. What is going on? Oh, geez, it's right in front of my face. I was looking for a circle pattern, and instead, why am I not seeing it? Well, that's just being intentionally confusing. Oh, it's underneath the zoom box. It happens. Go back to pattern. Circular pattern. Now what comes up instead of sketch, on my drop down, I can select faces, entire bodies, features, which is what I actually want, or entire components. In this case, I'm going to use features, which is this. Trying to select just the inside there. Now that is selected all of that internal. So that includes the hole that is created through the Extrude-Cut function and the full round fillet. So it's selecting multiple already completed features. Now, axis, exactly the same. Selecting the Z-axis. Now I can create multiples of that all the way around. I can do exactly what I did before. Quantity, you still have the slider, it's just here now, but I'm gonna do it numerically. Let's say 5, see what that looks like. I just want to make sure I'm not overcrowding. So there's actually like some vessel left to this thing. Yeah, that works. Hit OK. And it doesn't work. What's the problem? C pattern. It might be too complex. That figures. All right, let's try this. Let's try this again. Repeat circle pattern. Well, I know it works with faces. So if you select faces, you have to select each individual part. The feature should have selected the whole thing. So let's see if it does it with this one now. Axis, Z-axis. Let's see if it just does it with 3. Thinkifying. Hey, there we go. I think I just had too many in there. So edit feature. Let's try, since 7 was too much, let's try 5. Thinking. There we go. All right. So that is a way that you can create, use the circle pattern. Rather than altering the sketch and going through each step each time, you can create one complete feature and use the circle pattern to recreate multiples of that feature. All right. Save. Whoops. Circle pattern features. And I realize that is not how you spell circle. That's probably closer. All right. Let me unhide the dish. Reactivate the whole to-do. And return to front. And I'm just going to change my visual settings to visual to show all hidden so I can see right through the object. And I can see, all right. Now these, for the project, these do not have to sit right on top of each other. It's perfectly fine if they're floating. That is irrelevant. All right. Now one last thing I want to show you. This is basically the same thing. That say you didn't want to add these any kind of like crazy side features like this. That's perfectly fine. Let me hide the dish again. One thing you might want to consider. Let me reactivate the vessel. I'm going to do one more sketch here. These are for. No, I didn't mean to do that. Click it too fast. Side profiles. I want to add one more sketch here from the front. And what I'm going to do is down below here, I want to just create a circle right about there. And let's say, let's make that, we'll make it 10. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to extrude, cut, distance to object, see if it'll do from the side. It's doing some weird stuff. Yep, that's okay. This time, because there's multiple features there, it's not letting me do it. So I'm just gonna have to do this by just pulling the cut all the way out. Hit okay. Still do my full round fillet there. I don't know if it's gonna do it. Nope, too complex. That's okay. There we go. Oh, God, sometimes these toolboxes really get in the way. Yeah, come on. Too much, too little. What's going on? Not be created at the requested size. Okay, well, try something else. Fine, but don't add the fillet, you jerk. Basically, what I wanted to do is just create another feature on this because basically, if you had a bunch of drain holes on a perfectly bottomed or footed vessel, well, water's still going to get trapped in there. It can't bleed onto the rest of the dish. So same deal here. Completed that little feature, pattern, circle pattern, faces, that one. Select onto there. Now my axis. And just creating, same deal, just some extra little vents there on the bottom. That's all. All righty. Save and foot features. Great. Okay. Just a quick little thing on that. And let me hide all these sketches because this is getting real confusing. And then go back to visual style. We'll just go with visible sides only. All right, great. So that is, in effect, the completed assignment with some added flair on there. Now, the reason these must be separate components, or that is the requirement for the project, is if you were to go to print this, you do not want to grab both of these and export at the same. Because what will happen is they will export as a single unit and you can't separate them out. So if there's any issues with printing, well, they're stuck together. So if you want to go to print these, the last thing is Let me just collapse these trees so I can see what I'm doing. Just like before, go to File, 3D Print, select the body, and export there. So we'll go with, I really need to make a file here. Let's do just that. Desktop. 3D. Let's go there so we can actually do this. All right. Collins vessel. Save. And now do the same, but I want to select the dish. Same. There we are. Collins dish. All right. Now, just for example, if I go to plate this up in the slicer, open a PRUSA Slicer. And while I'm doing so, we'll open up desktop. Where are my folders? 3 objects. There we are. Okay. So now if I went to drop these on, vessel, and dish, I can arrange. Now, sometimes the auto arrange isn't perfect. You can still arrange stuff, but now I can separate these objects out and print them either completely separately. So maybe I wanted to have one in one color, one in another. I can have both printers going, or at very least, I can do this separately. The one thing we didn't get to last project, because it was all flat, with this one, you will need to use supports. And all that is select over here, supports, and you're going to start to learn how and when you need to use this, but usually selecting support from build plate only is exactly what you want. That's okay. It's good. Yes, go ahead and do some auto selecting for me, please, and thank you. And let's just say, let's go to draft. Yep, that's fine. Transfer over. Build plate only, 20% is a bit excessive. PET is my material, and my printer is selected properly. Now, if I go to slice, what's going to happen is it's going to automatically generate supports, scaffolding, because a dish like that is far too low for it to print without. Now, it's giving me a crazy error because I can't see it underneath this. Toolpath is outside. Okay, that just means I need to move one of these around. But looking at this, you can see what I mean. It creates all these additional supports so it can actually hold up the object while it's building against gravity. These are automatically generated. There are ways to manipulate them to minimize how much material you're using and all that such, but honestly, they use very little material. So I just wanted to briefly show you all that. If you are interested in that, I will, of course, show you that more individually as needed. And let's see here. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Evan. Appreciate it. Give me a moment, y'all online. I apologize. Let me go to PRUSA. Sorry about that. So what I did is I brought both of these objects separately into PRUSA Slicer. I realized this is going to be a little bit of a problem. The auto arrange made them a little bit too far out of the toolpath. So now I use these supports. I went to select supports, build plate only, infill. The walls are thin enough to where it won't really matter. So now when I go to slice, just redoing, hopefully it also gets rid of that error. There we are. Let's see if it did. Let's see if it goes error code on me again. I might need to move that dish some more. Nope, no more error. Great. So it's inside the build plate. You'll see it has a multitude of scaffolding, especially because my vessel has a flat bottom underneath. If I were to just make that pot flat in the bottom or with a minimal recess without that big foot, wouldn't need all that scaffolding. But like I said, honestly, it looks like a lot. It prints the scaffolding much thinner and much faster, so it really doesn't use that much more material. So just wanted to briefly show you what would go into actually printing these if they were on the same thing. Obviously, if you're printing them separately, like 2 different materials, whatever, you would print them one at a time. That's fine. All right. So that's the run up. Again, you do not have to make the extra super features on the sides. I just felt like it. There are no real requirements for how you need to create the vessel. Let me change back over to Fusion. There are no real requirements for how you need to style or anything like that. Printability is something that we'll discuss individually. If it's something you want to just experiment with playing, or something you actually want to print, we will have to discuss some features of that. The main feature about whether or not you can print something is what's called the overhang. Basically meaning you're fighting gravity. Looking at it in cross section, there's my axis. If I was drawing across, if my vessel were a bit more upright, the printer has to create scaffolding up to that point, which is fine. However, if it is flatter and then goes up, depending on the rate, so long as it is usually under 45 degrees. Honestly, this doesn't matter. This is just if you're interested in knowing. If it's over, it usually doesn't have to create scaffolding. If it's shallower, it will. That's usually just the general spot of it. But realistically, whatever you want to build, go for it. The general size is about 120 millimeters by about 100. You can play with those within that range. I just give those dimensions as a general size. That's a good size for a small plant. You can play around with that. So have fun, and we'll work through how to actually print them if you would like. Alrighty.